Does this thing, hello, hello, okay. I'm gonna need my hands. I'm not so much gonna criticize Orchard, I'm gonna criticize Plone more, I guess. Actually, what I'm going to be doing mostly is to show the Orchard UI. The Orchard admin content-oriented UI. And I, this is the level of this talk is set as high because it presupposes a lot of familiarity with the way things are done in Plone. Oh, okay. How about this? Okay. Okay. We've switched mics. I'm going to be showing a lot of screenshots, so you might want to come closer if you want to read what's going on. Okay, so the Orchard CMS, just to give a little background on what that is, it's been around since about 2008. It's completely open source, BSD licensed. It's under the .NET Foundation. Microsoft pays the salaries of some of the people who have worked on it over the years, and the lead guy all along, Sebastian Roos. Orchard is currently on version 1.10, and there will be no Orchard version 2. We're changing to Orchard Core. This is kind of a ZOP 3 moment. It's a rewrite, reconceptualization, and it's also the first version that is completely cross-platform. Just to put it in perspective a bit more, to compare them, I looked for usage statistics on BuiltWith and filtered to the top 10K sites on the internet, and Plone has a handful of them, and Orchard has a handful more. So it's also a very niche CMS, I'd say, but it does serve some serious sites, does see some serious use. So I'm showing Orchard now. I've been working with it for about 3 years, and I've decided to show it now because it's cross-platform. I'm running it under Ubuntu. I would not feel comfortable really dragging a proprietary CMS running on proprietary tech into this conference. It's also interesting to show it because because of the fact that I faced a similar challenge in rewriting as Plone has been going through from Python 2 to Python 3, the effort to revitalize Zo project as well. Okay. Also, Plone is confronting the move to the headless CMS paradigm. And in that as well, Orchard Core specifically is built to work as a normal CMS, as a headless CMS, and it's what I call a decoupled CMS, where you have basically pure ASP.NET templates that have access to the Orchard content, but that is not wired into the Orchard CMS rendering process at all. You're hand rolling your own code, and it feels a bit like ZOP 3 in that it's a framework for building modular applications, and the CMS is basically a set of modules that you enable. You can build any other kind of modular application on it as well. What struck me looking at the Orchard environment was that compared to the Plone add-on world, there was an Orchard gallery, but everything there seemed to be completely out of date, unmaintained. It was much more sparse than the Plone add-on ecosystem. That said, the Plone add-on ecosystem also contains a lot of things that fell by the wayside. You're not really sure which version or fork or of a package is really the live one. In the case of Orchard, the problem is more that the things that disappear under the waterline. And it's not so much a problem of sifting through stuff, it's more a problem of locating where the live stuff actually is. The community is much smaller, and initially this was a major concern for me. It's like, how can you do anything with this small amount of people? But I came to realize that critical mass can be small as long as it's people with real commitment who stick around for a long time. And in the case of Plone, a lot of its progress has also been due to a small group of people involved over the long term. A couple of places where Orchard is used, a couple of big sites. There's a software as a service thing, this .nest website where you can create your own Orchard instance. It hosts about 4,500 Orchard instances on one, what they call a tenant, on one Orchard instance. That's like it's a similar model to multiple Plones inside a Zope site, but that's a lot. It also runs weblogs.asp.net, which is about 1,500. It's got the core team make the design decisions. For example, they have strong opinions about what type theming is. We'll see that a bit later. They've got one content type story. They've got one import-export story. They've got one way of doing layout. It makes things a lot. It takes a lot of wondering about do I use this or that out of the picture. And one thing I like about that process is they have weekly core team meetings that are recorded and put on YouTube, and by now there's up to 290 of them, besides other tutorials and things. But that's a nice way of allowing people to catch up and follow exactly how technical decisions get made. So now I'd like the ground I'd like to cover looking at Orchard is the import-export story, content types, layout, theming, workflow, and two things that they call shapes and parts that I'll describe more as we get to that. So to start with import-export, in the Plone world, it's a very, very patchy situation. There are CSV solutions. There are ones that are built around JSON. There's Transmogrifier. Is it really import-export, or is it more of a migration tool? There is database level dumping of pickles. There's Plomino, which had a bunch of very nice ideas where you could, for example, replicate Plomino content between different sites. Orchard wraps everything into one way of doing it. With Orchard Core, the import-export story is described as deployment plans. The idea is that you actually formulate an import-export recipe as a way to deploy to other Orchard sites. And that one import-export format encompasses site settings, content type definitions, the layout placement of things in the UI, and of course the content itself. And it's modular. You pick and choose which ones form part of an import. Orchard 1 is using XML, sort of a kind of a very fast and loose, undisciplined. It's valid XML, but it's schemaless. So that means it's actually quite easy to write. Orchard Core is moving to JSON, which is more suitable for the way that they're using its simple key values. Um, um, and because it's so not fussy and consistent, I've been able to easily generate the input XML or JSON from CSVs or whatever other sources I got. Let's have a look at what it looks like in Orchard specifically. So in the Orchard admin UI, you add a deployment plan, and then you pick what you are going to import and export. So here you see the options that you have. Like site settings is the name of the site and all that kind of stuff. You've got the content definitions. You've got all the templates that are defined in the site. Orchard has default ways of rendering all its basic content types and widgets and so on, but you can always override that in a specific site. Okay, so next let's step over to content types. We've got content types. A content type, you can add parts, which is a bit like behaviors in dexterity. You've got parts on the content level as well, so you can actually create parts similarly to how you can create types. So it's like as if you could create behaviors through the web. However, parts with more functionality would be implemented as file system modules. The fields and forms are also content instances, content items. Then just to have a quick overview of how Orchard does layout. Normal content item like a page, okay, you can build on normal content items like page that lets you do layout in the content area of a page already. Then you can define layouts that are used in specific contexts. A layout defines zones. You can place widgets on content types anywhere. You can use them in the layout of a page, for example. But you can also assign widgets to zones. So if you have a widget that is not related to specific content, but like a footer or something that is relevant across wide areas of the site, you configure to show up in some zone. And then everything that that becomes part of the page is rendered by a template. So you've got templates for layouts, for content items, for parts, for fields, for widgets. So you can override that at as granular a level as you feel like. And you can do that writing Razor code or writing Liquid. Razor is sort of C# scripting embedded in HTML, and Liquid is a much simpler, safer, sandboxed sort of string interpolation like way of templating, which it does loops and so on, but it's not a full language. It's safer to give to editors. So let's look at that in practice a bit. You're looking at the layers UI in the Orchard admin. You can assign or create layers there. So in the footer, you can create rules for the footer zone there. A layer is defined by a rule which can say, for example, this thing appears when someone is authenticated or when someone's not authenticated or on a specific URL. You can add widgets to zones. Widgets can be static, can be dynamic bits of templates that are evaluated upon rendering. It can be complex, so you can add a container widget that contains a bunch of other widgets in layout relating to each other, images, whatever. So here I'm adding a container widget. So after adding the container, I can add widgets on the container again. In the little toolbar at the bottom there, you can see I can set them to take up a certain amount of horizontal space. They can flow left, flow right, or take up the whole width and so on. So just with that, I can do a layout. And that's two widgets, one aligned left, one aligned right, taking up half the space. What I like in Orchard is the function. All the Orchard functionality is built up from content in the CMS. So what that means is, for example, menu items are content instances. In this case, the site that we're looking at now is, wait, let me switch to that thing here, okay. The demo Orchard site that we're looking at is an agency homepage. It looks like this. And to build this, this is basically a landing page site. And to build that, they define a landing page content type. Build that layout and gathering of content on that. So it's a theme-specific content type then. I said that menu items are built on content. So here you can see the menu content item, and on the menu content item, we are adding individual menu items, and they are of the content type link. And and you can drag and drop these around, make submenus, and we'll see a little bit later where how that link content type becomes eligible for being in a menu. Namely, we assign a stereotype to it. Let's look some more at content. So, Orchard is a bit like, it reminded me a bit of WordPress in the sense that in the admin, you go to the content listing and then, you get a listing of content items. And compared to Plone, this felt very backwards to me. In Plone, we've got a hierarchical tree of folders. It's much you can get to the content that you can organize the content much nicer than sticking everything in a flat list. But it turns out that this isn't really what you get there, because in Orchard Core, to some extent in Orchard 1 as well, but differently. Okay, in Orchard Core, you can add collections or bag parts to your content type, and when you do that, you can add sub-items. So these are actually contained inside, and they're service. These are so on the landing page. We've got one collection called services, and it collects instances of the service content type. Looking at a service, this is in place, so I expand the service on the demo page. Now I'm editing that service. This is a custom content type. We'll look at the definition of that content type later. But here you'll see it's got an icon class field added in there. And we're going to see where that icon class field is used in the template in a minute. We'll look at templates now. So that landing page in this theme is implemented using a custom template. This reminds a bit of JBot in the Plone world, where the name of the path to a template determines how it's going to be used and what context it's going to be used. Except that in Orchard, this name-based lookup of templates is baked into the framework from the bottom up. So all lookups of views go through or look for templates in a hierarchy of places according to these names. So in this case, it's named content dash dash, so it's going to apply for rendering a piece of content, and the content type that it's going to be used for is landing page. And then there follows a Razor template, and there you can see this. Where are we? The lorem ipsum text that you see there, you can see in the template here, and then follows a loop over service content items. Down there, okay, in the previous slide, this was a couple of commits ago when they didn't have highlighting turned on that field. Actually, it's going to be looking more like this, and there you can see the icon class field being used to render the shopping cart icon on this service. And this is what it looks like in the loop on the page. Okay, let's look a bit more at how content types are done. So I mentioned before that menus become menu items because they get a menu item stereotype assigned. Widgets, content type becomes available as a widget by assigning it the widget content type. You can see here the create new landing page button. On this screen, that is the only content type that you can add instances of directly. All the other ones are things that you use as part of layout or in the context of a menu or as a widget and so on. Let's see what it looks like when you're editing one. When you're editing a content type, you have an area where you add fields, and then you have an area where you add parts. And adding parts is a bit like picking behaviors in dexterity, except here you can go and edit the part and add additional fields to it, change labels and so on, and you can actually add parts more than once, and then it's a named part, you give it another name. So here I'm adding a new field to the service content type. The field types are gathered from whatever module defines fields conforming to the correct interfaces and so on. They all have associated templates. You can override those templates one by one. So here I'm looking at the service content type. It's got that edit template option. You can edit the template for use in different contexts. If you hit that, it volunteers to create your template for you. Now you can see it's named for that content type, service. So now it's content service instead of content landing page. Okay, let's look a bit more at parts. This is like Dublin core metadata. Some of them like alias and auto root and common are things that add the basic functionality that all content parts through the web are going to have. But then others you've seen like bag makes it a container. Flow gives it the ability to flow widgets relative to each other. In the case of this landing page, it doesn't have any fields of its own. All the fields that show up on the landing page come from the parts and that are on it. Okay. So this gives you an idea already of how theming is approached in Orchard. The designer doesn't really believe in the fact that you can take one site and stick another theme on top of it in terms of template and layout and colors and everything. For him, it's much more intertwined. It's editable in the admin for a specific site, but you're going to do some work turning, say, some random bootstrap theme into something that works with your content model and your application. Okay, this is like, let's look at modules. This is like the add-on page for Plone. It's as you can see by the scroll bar, there's a lot of modules available in Orchard, because a lot of the basic CMS functionality is is implemented in terms of modules that are like a lot of infrastructure stuff that is automatically turned on. But a lot of other features that are baked in Plone or standard in Plone, like workflows, are implemented as modules that you can turn on and off as you like. Templates as well, the ability to add templates. I mentioned how you can override templates in a granular way. Here is a quick look at what kinds of overrides you can do. And to reiterate the overlap between functionality and theme, they've got a theme called the blog theme, and they've got a theme called software as a service. So that enables multi-tenancy. It's really a different kind of site. Okay, let's have a quick pass through the workflow in Orchard. Workflow in Orchard is very different from workflow in Plone. Workflow in Plone is managing the state of content through managing content through various states and managing the access rights and stuff of a content item in a state. And in Orchard, it's more like conventionally, when this happens, then that has to happen, and another thing has to happen. This diagram you see is the visual workflow editor in Orchard. So to do some workflow in Orchard, you could, for example, do a contact submission form. And again, to do forms, you need to enable the form module. So we filter the add-ons and see the form module, enable that. To enable a contact form, you're going to submit the form, so then you search for workflows and enable HTTP events on workflows. Once you've done that, suddenly your list of content types contains a new one, namely form, as a widget. To create a form, I'm not creating a special separate thing. I can just stick it on a page. So I create a page, and I add a form widget to it. I set the HTTP method of the widget. I set how it flows. I pick inputs that I add as widgets on that page. Now I've got my contact form. Then you go and look at and define and build a workflow. So here I've defined the contact form to do a post. So my initial workflow activity is to react to a post submission. When that's done, in this case, I've got a content item representing that form, so I'm binding the form submission to that state. I validate form fields, so I do a bunch of form field validations in parallel. I gather that up and see whether any of them fail, display errors, or send email and display a thank you page. Okay, so on the headless CMS front, Orchard Core comes with GraphQL. And it bundles a very nice GraphQL editor called GraphicQL. It auto-completes, so you can start with a blank query and just hit Control Space to see what do I have here, and basically dig down through your content types definition and structure. So if you've got, in this case, articles in your page, you can see what fields we have on my articles and include the ones that you want in your GraphQL query. In this case, article reference posts, and posts can be either blog posts or articles. So but now you're traversing from an initial article instance to related content instances and gathering them up into one GraphQL response. Here we're looking at the same thing in Postman, which obviously, the GraphicQL editor inside of Orchard is great for formulating, exploring things, formulating how you want to tell your client to query, but then the actual querying is going to happen from another thing like Orchard, like Postman, for example. So to sum up, what we have here is what I like about Orchard is the fact that the entire stack of functionality, what you can do in the CMS, is built up from content types, parts, instances of content types. One thing that I didn't spend enough time on really is this concept of shapes. Everything, a content type field, everything in Orchard gets rendered as a shape before it is rendered, before it's finally rendered. And the shape is basically like a JSON structure. It's a bag of hierarchical bag of values. When you're working with content in a template, for example, you're dealing with the shape of that content. You don't get rendered HTML that you need to wrangle. You get key value storage that you can go through. Content types, parts that are part of content that you can. Oh, okay, that's it. Parts that you can assign to your own content types, and all of this stuff, round trippable, exportable, importable. A couple of days ago, I presented the Hacking Plone training day, which was basically about building this same kind of stuff in Plone, where we were looking at dexterity, ambidexterity, Plone form gen, contrasting a bit with easy form, looking at workflow manager down to the ZMI to hack workflows in a more granular way. I was very proud of getting Plone import-export working, grabbing the Plone conference talks from the live website, turning that into CSV and importing that into my dexterity-based new blank Plone site via CSV, except it only worked halfway. It didn't do all the field types. It took quite a bit of guessing to see how I needed to do the CSV. So basically, we had to. It was like building a ship while you're on it. It was like pulling things together from all over the place, and there seems to be a lot of consolidation happening in Plone right now with things like Plone REST API. And archetypes getting dropped finally, and so on. So I think, what impressed me about Orchard is it's the same kind of problems that Plone has been dealing with, and the solutions that it comes up with are make a lot of sense from a Plone perspective as well. And it seems like Plone is sort of drifting in that direction as well. But it has more legacy. It's got much more of an issue with design and leadership than in the case of Orchard. We've got one guy who's been doing it for going on 10 years. And yeah, that's basically what I wanted to get across. I hope it was interesting. So if you've got any questions, please ask. Yo. It's the workflow editor.
So to do the validations, you have to kind of like create separate validation steps for every validation.
Yeah. Any module can let's add a task. Any module can add activities. For example, when I enabled the HTTP workflow module, suddenly we've got like HTTP redirect popping up here. And we've got stuff like add a form validation error or validate form field and so on. So they will, depending on the kind of site you have, you will enable modules that give you this set of activities and events and stuff that are relevant for your workflow. Let's say, let's add one of these, and then you wire them up together.
Another question.
Yeah.
When you write the templates, like the Razor templates, that's like sandboxed, or how does the code security work? Can you just upload any arbitrary code?
Razor templates are dangerous, but liquid templates are sandboxed.
But can you how do you stop the ability for people to import Razor templates?
You just don't enable that module. You can enable liquid templates and Razor templates separately. Oh, and now you drag them around. So this one goes here.
If the team's got them, then you're kind of screwed, right? Like the person who implemented the thing.
Yeah. So yeah, basically, if you're using a deployment plan that includes a bunch of I mean, the deployment plan is going to specify which modules get enabled, and it might include templates in the UI and so on.
And so pretty much all this is through the web, right? Like that's their main way of the whole deployment plan idea is
I've
in a module if you want, but mostly the emphasis of it on through the web.
well, I presented this. I presented the through the web story because I wanted to contrast. I wanted to contrast the same kind of thing in Plone, but for example, writing Razor templates and overriding things like this that's not something that I mean, that's something an integrator would do, but like you wouldn't do that. Say when you're adding a Plone instance on .nest just to make your own homepage, you wouldn't be doing that.
So another, one of the things with Plone that's always prided itself on is not having paid contributors, because the theory being that it will discourage volunteerism. Do you think that holds true with the paid contributors, or?
One of my earlier slides there had line community open source versus corporate open source, and that is an issue because, like I said, with Orchard, what you see is you find there are big users, there are all kinds of interesting modules, but a lot of the time they're big commercial sites. Nobody ever bothered to actually publicly release something, even though they don't mind releasing the module if you meet this guy. So the fact that it's sort of coming from a more corporate background does play a role. I don't think it compromises the project, the design of the project, and there's one guy leading the project, but he doesn't implement even the majority of stuff himself. There's a lot of people helping, and it happens in a normal open source community way. There are a couple more companies doing commercial services on Orchard than in the case of Plone, but I don't know if they're that significant in the Orchard ecosystem. Looks like I'm done, so catch me later.